If you're looking for recession, you're looking at the wrong information. I'm here to tell you why. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Here on this channel, what we need to declare is what is going on right now at this time. How can you ever find out where you need to go if you don't know where you are? Look, the stats we're given are not accurate. Reality is very different from what we see presented to us in the mainstream media. Yes, there are alternative sources, but we got to understand what is meaningful to us and what is meaningful to the corporations, the central banks, and those who are making the decisions that affect our lives. Those individuals are looking at a certain set of data. So in today's video, I'm going to show you what's going on there. And you got to understand there are two very different stories happening at the same time. If we're not going to pay attention to both and understand both of those, we are going to be blindsided as we move and progress through 2024. This will be the most painful year for a lot of people. Others are going to be able to, I don't like to use the word pivot, but they're going to do so and are going to benefit from the decisions that are made by those who control it all. Consumer prices rose 0.3% in December, higher than expected, pushing the annual rate to 3.4%. So what they're telling us is that, yes, it is hotter than what was expected. The general trend is still down, but you got to look at it month over month. You got to look at it year over year. You also have to factor in why. Why did prices increase the way that they did, and what is the trend? So what do we have? We have producer prices. We have consumer prices. When we look at producer prices, that's the first thing. Because imagine if your input costs were significantly higher than what they had been before, that will then get passed down into the consumer product. A lot of what the producer price index, you're thinking of, let's say, the raw metal that would be then made to use a product that you buy at the store, but it even factors in things like the fees that you would pay for financial services. Like it's not exactly, like, this is a very wide umbrella or net when you think about it in that respect. So keep that in mind. Just knowing that the producer prices, that index went skyrocketing high because of all the supply chain issues, because of everything that we saw during that time, hard to get stuff. That came up, that came down significantly. And, there is a worry that, it's too low now. And now suddenly we are going to beyond disinflation into deflation. If the suppliers, if the manufacturers, if the builders are not doing well, that translates to jobs. And that's why it's important. You might say, I don't care about a PPI. Well, there is a story that is told within that PPI, Producer Price Index, that does make a big difference. So keep that in mind. Then we have the Consumer Price Index, CPI. While it doesn't measure what's going on with you, when you go to the store, you're paying more than ever before for just about everything. Then there's the shrinkflation, that's on top of it. Then there's the skimpflation, which is like, hey, let's put some sawdust in the sandwich and let's fill it up. That kind of thing, one by one by one. Actually, a lot of prices, when you factor in everything in that respect, things have doubled in just a few years. So we know that there is an actual real inflationary problem. However, do you think that JP Morgan and the Federal Reserve and all that, do you think they're going to look at real stats? They're going to factor in inflation, shrinkflation, skimpflation? Never. They're never going to factor that in. So you got to take that into account. And if you don't understand the two stories, you do not have the full picture and you are not informed. Here at this channel, if you are willing to stick with me, I will bring you all of the data that you need. All right. Looking at this, you could see where it has gone, and it kind of levels out around this area, or should say chops around in this area of 3.4%, has not gone towards the 2% target. We'll see what happens in the coming months. Like I said, producer price index has an impact, but at the same time, producer price index includes things that you wouldn't think are there. And so we'll see over these coming months. One thing that has come down in a year over year is shelter rent inflation year over year change. It isn't going up at the same pace it was before, and that's an important note, okay? Well, that's going to show up in the stats. Why? Because your shelter, your rent is a big component. At the same time, it's a big component of, like, when they do the measurements, including it, CPIs and all that, but in reality, it's such a large percentage of your income. And it depends on where you live and so on. But many people pay almost all of it when you look at it on this one thing, where they live, the bills that they pay for the home, the insurance, and so on. And so we know that that is very key and important to keep in mind. Shelter, rents are going up. There have been examples, like on a yearly basis, you look at over a year, how many times have we seen rent decline? In the United States, there is one example of that. That's after the financial crisis, housing crisis, where for a brief period and for, overall, a small amount, that prices did in fact decline, but that's a very rare event. Keep that in mind, okay? Interesting note, when we factor in M2, that's the money supply, comparing that with the CPI, that's the blue line, okay? CPI, blue line, PPI is in there as well, which by the way has gone down considerably from the top, and the PCE, okay? So in general, the inflation rates have come down, and what we know is that this corresponds to the money supply. No question about that, right? Also must note that this is the year-over-year change. Always make it very clear whenever you're looking at this data or you're seeing it from another YouTuber, M2. Are you looking at the actual M2 or are you looking at the year-over-year change? Because that's the thing that has come down considerably, not necessarily the money supply itself. Also factor in that M2 itself went up like crazy during the years after 2020 and beyond. So getting back to trend line reversion to the mean, we would expect it to decline a lot, even if it still doesn't hit back to that trend line. It's still got a long way to go down. What we're seeing here is that the expectation is that inflation rates based on M2 should be declining. We don't know though. Does M2 come up? These are supposed to be correlated. The money supply and inflation correlated, but there is a very mixed picture right here. And I would like to know what you think about this. Does M2, let's just say starting to pump that cash out there, is there some sort of stimulus in the cards coming in 2024? Or does the CPI decline considerably? That's what I want to know from you in the comment section. Let's get that conversation going there. PPI, you could see that it is on a month-over-month basis has declined. Producer prices, but on a year-over-year basis, it's up slightly at 1%. Okay, so watch that very carefully because that does determine what happens later with consumers. You got extreme examples, like in Argentina, poised to surpass Venezuela with a 200% inflation crisis. You can't fix inflation without very difficult times. It's going to happen. That's the only way. You have to have that pain, just like you got to rip that Band-Aid off. It's got to happen. Because when you print all the money, you got a problem. When you devalue your money, you will pay the price. You suffer the consequences. Never allow them, with a straight face, never allow them to get away with the devaluation of your currency one way, shape, or form. You're going to pay. You pay directly through taxation, where they're doing this thing. It's called income tax, where you work real hard, but you don't get paid until July. You got to think of it like that. Don't think of it as, a lot of my paycheck came out. You work for free. You go to work every single day in traffic, dealing with your boss, dealing with all this, and you don't get paid until July 1st. That mentality. You got to understand what that is. You got slave labor going on the first half of that year. And if you put yourself into that perspective, that should make a little shift as to, what I'm doing here, is this the best thing that I can be? Should I be looking around and trying to find other streams, other solutions? That's up to you. This is basically just showing the food index coming way off the top. Great news, positive news. Food prices on the index have come down. Why? Because the rice situation, other things, crop failures, this and that. There's no question. That was a big problem. A lot of that has eased. What happened with Ukraine with the grain there, a lot of that has eased as well. Those come down. But for the average person, especially in the West, they're experiencing higher food costs today than last year, than the year before, than the year before. So they're paying more. Okay? And you just look at it in this, the UN Food and Agriculture World Food Price year over year, it's down. Oh, yeah. But do you see that at the store? Likely not overall when you look at the average basket. I mean, you see it. I've seen the videos online, and I've seen the posts. This is $100 of food, and they show like 6 items there, and it's just what happened. Well, the devaluation of the currency, the dollar, came down. At the same time, there's problems too. There's some call it the greedflation or what have you. Of course, companies want to make as much profit as they possibly can. That's no doubt. But we can't ignore the fundamental first problem, and that is when you have a central bank that prints money, you will devalue your currency. Argentina is an extreme example of problems, fiscal problems, monetary problems. Inflation gets hot. What do? Oh, we try this, we try this, we try this, we try this. Inflation gets worse. Try this, try this. Oh, we can put a Band-Aid on it. And it doesn't work. Rate cut expectations in 2024. This is what's coming, my friends. You got to understand this, that they will, quote unquote, fix the problem by kicking the can down the road, by devaluing the currency much further. Pain will come in the form of deflation, of disinflation, of depression, whatever, recession. When these instances occur, you then get this situation where, oh, we need to intervene. And now what do? We crush people. We crush them. And we do that. We create a divide in between the rich and the poor by the central bank. The central bank was created to ensure that there are only a few elite families at the top, and every so often we slam everybody down. But all along the way, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, because these families, they don't think in terms of like you do. They don't think in terms of, I need to be good over the next, year or two. They're thinking 1,000, 100 years, 1,000 years. That's the way that they think, and they created the Federal Reserve in order to make sure that they maintain that monopoly. And they've done a great job of that monopoly, let me tell you. And so whether or not it happens in March or later on in the year, it looks like it's very likely, unless we get stuck in this stage of, inflation's a little too hot. We can't do it right now. Maybe we'll do it later and so on. But quantitative tightening can certainly slow down. Why? There are many, many factors covered in previous videos. They can't really get around this because the BTFP, because of the reserve repos. I mean, there's a lot of things I covered before. Interest rate hikes won't crush Canadians as they cope with loan renewals, banks say. That's right. Oh, they're going to be all good. Yeah, it's double the price that they were paying before, but they'll cope with it. Oh, I'm sure they'll cope, maybe with a bottle of alcohol or something. Look, this is the situation we're in right now. I see what's going on. I look at this, different countries. I'm analyzing it all. And when you realize that there's this 2 stories happening simultaneously, you're going to figure it out. Wait a second now. We got to understand this, and then we make those decisions based on it. I hope it made sense in this video. You let me know. If it didn't, if it did, you got to get your money right. You got to get your situation in order, because things get more difficult from here on in. You got to realize that there are things that you can do, take action on. All right? People that are in my group, just before I'm recording this video, I have my Finance Friday group. We went through and we looked at the current conditions. We looked at what could potentially do well. That's what it's all about on the Finance Friday. And then the Sundays, what we have is Business Sundays, where we look at this for 2 hours, by the way, both of these sessions, 2 hours, where we get into the depths of how to build an online business. Why do we want an online business? Because it's infinitely scalable, so that if we end up out of work or the economy around us is not doing well, we can be selling to different places, different platforms, different parts of the world, currency diversification, geographical diversification, and the ability to get up and go. because you never know what's going to happen. These things all in the link in the description. I hope you join. I hope you get on that. And, I just appreciate you being here. There's going to come a time at some point in the near future where the YouTube videos will probably stop at some point. So, I want to get you into the classes, which is something I want to continue doing. So, you let me know. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.